Hey, what's up, everybody? It's us. We're back again. The Convince Me show podcast. We'll eventually roll it over into a podcast. But we're back again. We decided to do a second one. You guys actually gave us, we have trios and trios of fans. You guys gave us some good feedback. You seem to enjoy it. So we decided to come back and do it again. Joined again by these two gentlemen, Bennett and Elrod. Guys, how's it going?
Going good.
What's going on? You mean you'd have me back again? I'm shocked.
Yeah, it wasn't my first choice, but you seem to be available. If you haven't checked us out yet, we have a page that this video will actually be posted on. I launched it today and we're at over 100 likes, and that's without Elrod contributing at all to the promotion of this thing. So hopefully by the time we drop this video, we're recording, we'll break down the fourth wall here. We're recording on Monday night. This will be dropping as you're watching this. It'll be Tuesday night. Hopefully we'll be up even more by then. But guys, if you like this, let us know what you like. Tell your friends about it. Send your friends to the page, like the page, share the videos. Let's see what we can do with this, because honestly, it's pretty fun to do. So here we are yet again tonight for this episode. The roles have changed a bit one of the very, very few times, one of the very, very few things that there's a disagreement on. But me and Mr. Bennett here will be debating each other, going against each other. And our topic tonight is best grunge band. I will be representing and again winning for Alice in Chains, although the deck is stacked against me. And Bennett will be on behalf of Nirvana. And Elrod, Judge Elrod, will be moderating, mediating. Elrod, you got anything to say before we jump into it?
Does that scare you that you're putting this much trust in me to dash your hopes of not saying that Alice in Chains is better than Nirvana?
I know my odds of winning anything with you as the mediator is not good, especially with this type of argument. But, underdogs win sometimes. Sometimes Jordan scores 60 after only playing 7 minutes a game for the last few minutes or last few games of the year or whatever. I don't know. That was a terrible. Just go.
Before we get into the topic tonight, this is Seattle 90s grunge music. And what goes together with grunge? And this is a courtroom. Normally, we're a judge would be wearing a robe. So tonight, if you'll indulge me, plaid is the new robe. So I will be putting this on. I don't have a gavel. I do have a pen. So that will be the gavel. And I'll be putting on my robe. Ready for some opening arguments from my counselors here.
Do you have your heroin needle?
I do not. That would be, that plus some Seattle coffee would be the perfect outfit to this.
The needle should be your gavel.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
We're supposed to do it. Never mind. We won't go there.
So I have a number between 1 and 20. The person that gets closest gets to determine whether they want to go first or second in opening statements. I'll start with you, Bennett. What would you like to be your number?
Since it is 90s and it is Seattle, I'm going to go with number 3 for Alex Rodriguez.
Ooh. Andy?
I'm going to play the odds and say number 4.
16. Both of you are incredibly not right, but 16 is a number. So, Andy, you have 1. Would you like to go first or second in opening statements?
I will allow Mr. Bennett to go first.
Perfect. I would have picked first anyway, so that works out.
There we go.
Convince me, Sir Bennett.
All right, Elrod.
Why is Nirvana better than Alice in Chains?
Right off the bat, I'm going to hit you with a couple of facts. These are 100% facts. And by the end of this podcast, I will prove to you that they are 100% facts. Number one, Nirvana is one of the greatest bands of all time. Of all time, they're one of the greatest bands. They're not like a niche band. They're not just a grunge band in the 90s. They're one of the greatest bands. And also, they are one of the most influential bands of all time. There's been several artists that have used Nirvana lyrics and quoted them in their songs, such people as Lana Del Rey, Blink-182, Justin Timberlake, and Jay-Z. So you have a broad range of people that have used Nirvana in their lyrics. This band came to represent an entire generation of people. I'm talking about Generation X. And they pretty much altered the course of music when they exploded onto the scene in the early 90s. They basically introduced people to alternative music, and they really pushed it to the forefront of music. That's where I'm going to stop for right now.
Okay. Andy, you have the floor.
All right. First of all, Bennett sounded very attorney-like there, and I'm kind of proud because he's the only one that hasn't sat through law school of the three of us here. But this is probably a strange way to go about opening arguments, but nothing that Mr. Bennett said was wrong. As a matter of fact, he's absolutely right. Nirvana is one of the greatest bands of all time. They are.
So should we end this now then?
Zip it. They are one of the most influential bands of all time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are quote unquote the best. They are one of, for sure. And what's crazy is when we look at grunge, what we label grunge, those bands that came out of Seattle of the early 90s, you basically have your big four. You've got Nirvana, you've got Alice in Chains, you've got Pearl Jam, you've got Soundgarden. There were more, but those are your big four. And to be completely honest, you could make points for all four of those bands. And I realize that not only because Elrod is the mediator and will likely not pick me to win anything, but when you say grunge, you think Nirvana. When kids listen to Nirvana, they hear Nirvana, they know Smells Like Teen Spirit, just like everybody else does. They think that means they know grunge, and they know 90s grunge metal. Because Nirvana, as much as Kurt Cobain didn't want to be, was the face of it, was the mainstream of the grunge. But does somebody that likes New Day, I'm thinking wrestling now, does somebody that likes Green Day, does that mean they like all punk music? No, everybody likes Green Day. Just because somebody likes Nirvana, does that mean that they're a grunge fanatic? No, everybody likes Nirvana. But when we narrow it down to this particular genre, what this genre is about, what makes up the genre of grunge, and who did it best, not necessarily who's known best for it, but who did it best. What you're going to be shown tonight, Judge in your plaid flannel, is that this counselor in his blue and orange flannel is going to show you that Alice in Chains was the best grunge band of the 90s. Not the most well known, but the best.
All right. Well, let's get into the meat of this. And I want to start off with you, Andy. Tell me about Alice in Chains band members, and tell the audience about maybe their musical talents.
I think the best way to do this, and I hope I don't step on Bennett's foots. I can't speak tonight. I don't want to step on these footsies. I hope I don't step on Bennett's feet here, but I'm actually partly going to help his argument, but I'm also going to crush the soul of what I assume is the crux of his argument. So let's look at it by each instrument. Let's look at the bass guitarist, who in the crux, the prime of Alice in Chains was Mike Starr. Left the band in '93, was replaced by Mike Inez. Both fantastic bass players. Exhibit A. Listen to this opening bass lick. I hope it plays well. Iconic bass lick, iconic bass player. But I'm going to go ahead and give, as far as if we're going by instruments, I'm going to give the nod. I'm going to just go ahead and concede this one to Bennett because Chris knows, as I'm sure Bennett will tell you, was fantastic. Now let's get in more of, I led with my weak points. Let's get stronger as I go. When you look at the drums, you've got Sean Kinney on the drums. And when you look at the drummers of grunge, today I'm talking about Sean Kinney. Bennett's going to be talking about Dave Grohl. You've got Matt Cameron, who played with Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. And if we're being technical, probably the best drummer of the grunge era. But you're automatically, you hear Dave Grohl, you're going to want to think Dave Grohl. But here's the thing. Dave Grohl is a rock god and has been for 20 years. But he wasn't 30 years ago. And Dave Grohl was a good drummer. He was a great drummer, probably the perfect drummer for Nirvana. But I think it's a push. And I'm going to show you Exhibit B, and I promise these are the only two times I'm going to music here. But I want you to hear the opening of this song. That's not drumming. That's an entire percussion session in one song. Dave Grohl is like Animal of the Muppets. He's fantastic. He's loud. But technically, you know what? I'll even say that's a push because Sean Kinney was perfect for Alice in Chains. Dave Grohl was perfect for Nirvana. But now let's. I'm not done. You chill.
This is my courtroom.
We're getting to the meat of the matter here, and I promise the rest of my points will be much shorter. The face of grunge, Kurt Cobain, lead singer extraordinaire, guitar playing. Let's look at the guitar playing first. He was a good guitar player, Kurt Cobain was. But Jerry Cantrell is the definitive grunge guitarist. Cobain was good. His guitar playing wasn't his strongest point. Jerry Cantrell, if you're building a perfect grunge band, a vast majority of people want Jerry Cantrell on the drum. All right, let's look at vocals. The incredible Lane Staley, the incredible Kurt Cobain, both distinct, both iconic voices, both highly recognizable. And if we're looking at those two head to head, I would pick Lane Staley, but it's really, really close, and that's a very biased edge I have. I couldn't argue Cobain. I mean, I couldn't say you're wrong if you say Cobain's a better singer than Lane Staley. But we're not looking at Staley versus Cobain. We're looking at Nirvana versus Alice in Chains. And there's one thing that Alice in Chains has that I think defines exactly who they are as a band, and that is the harmonies that Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell have. I knew a guy who studied musical theory at Belmont, and he's very much a country music guy. He's very much a little bit of classic rock. But he's a friend of my brother's. Talking to him one night, I I like music. I don't know a lot of the technicalities of music. I just know it sounds good. But as he was pointing out to me, the harmonies that come out of Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell singing together, what Alice in Chains is most known for, is like musically impossible. What they can put together, their harmonies reach pitches and ranges that should not be met in one cohesive voice that they have together. So if we're going to look at Lane Staley versus Kurt Cobain, I'm probably beat. But we're looking at Nirvana versus Alice in Chains. And while Kurt Cobain, fantastic singer, heartfelt singer, iconic singer, there's nobody that can touch the harmonies of Cantrell and Staley. So we're looking at vocals, Alice in Chains, guitar, Alice in Chains. I gave bass to Nirvana and then a push on the drums. That's why if we're looking at the band members, Alice in Chains. That was very long-winded. You should have stopped me.
I tried to, but you were in contempt of court. Bennett, tell me about Nirvana, their band members, and he's given you some leeway here. He said he's conceded some points. How about you focus on the ones that he didn't concede?
Well, Mr. Rutherford pretty much handed out all my points for me, so I'm going to try to hit on some of the stuff that he didn't touch. It's not a whole lot of meat left on the bone, but just to kind of give them kind of a formal introduction, unless you've lived under a rock for the last 30, 35 years, everybody knows who Kurt Cobain is. I'm not really going to introduce him, but obviously he was the vocals, lead guitar, lyrics. He was pretty much their face. Then you've got Chris Novoselic, who was the bass guitarist. And then, of course, you've got Dave Grohl, who was the most popular of their drummers. They had other drummers before him. They even recorded one album before him. But none of those guys really kind of had that edge and kind of push him the way that he did. So for all intents and purposes, I'm going to go with Dave Grohl as he is the most popular of their drummers. I'm going to first start with Chris. I feel like of the trio, he does not get near enough credit as he should for what he did for Nirvana. Just a little fun fact, those two actually met back in high school, and Cobain heard him playing like outside of his room or outside of his house or something like that because he was friends with his brother. And Kurt was trying to get him to play with him, be in his band, and even gave him like a tape. And Chris at first wasn't really he was like, okay, whatever, wasn't going to give him the time of day. But then after hearing him, he was like, okay, yeah, we got something here. So that's just kind of a little fun fact that those two kind of got together around high school, and Kurt actually basically kind of begged and pleaded for Chris to join him, be part of his vision that would become Nirvana. Those two are the founding members. They went by a couple of names before that, but just for this sake, they're Nirvana. He is like the anchor of the trio. If I had to kind of put him and kind of put a definition on him, he really would emphasize Dave Grohl's drums, especially when he was like on his cymbals. And he really kind of helped Kurt push his vocals and would push his chords on his guitar. So he was kind of like the unsung hero of the three. He really excelled at descending bass slides. And one little thing that was very subtle that he did that a lot of people don't really pick up on, they hear it, but they don't really notice it, is whenever, obviously Nirvana is known for going from very dynamic shifts in their tone where they might start out with a song very, very quiet and very calm, and then Kurt will start yelling or screaming, and then the whole dynamic of this song shifted. And what Chris would do is he would be the one that kind of transitioned that song where you'll hear the bass go from one dynamic to another, and you're like, oh, they're fixing to shift dynamics like they always do. I feel like that's one thing that he did really good in, and not a lot of people really noticed that. Some of the songs that he did that in would be like Lithium, where it starts out kind of really, really tranquil, and then it just out of nowhere, it's like boom, then they start rocking out. Also Sliver, and also Smells Like Teen Spirit. I don't really like talking about Smells Like Teen Spirit, but we will be forced to a lot tonight. So that's just some of the things that he did that Mr. Rutherford didn't touch on, that I feel like Chris doesn't really get a whole lot of credit for.
Okay.
Moving on, Dave Grohl, he joined Nirvana, like I said, kind of in late 1990. They'd already released Bleach, and they just kind of felt like they needed another direction. And the band that Dave Grohl was in kind of fizzled out, and he was kind of introduced to the band. And Kurt said immediately after hearing Dave Grohl, he knew, boom, this is the guy that we need. Technically, Dave Grohl is the most proficient and versatile member of the group by far. He was actually ranked 27th greatest drummer of all time, which was kind of surprising, I thought, because, Dave even said that he's not really considered himself a drummer. His passion was for the guitar and vocals and lyrics, not drumming. So for him to be that good of a drummer speaks a lot about his versatility for the group. Of course, he went on to be the founder, the lead vocalist, the guitarist, and the songwriter for the Foo Fighters after Nirvana dismembered, whatever you want to call it, in '94. So it just speaks a lot about what Dave Grohl did for Nirvana. He really kind of pushed them. And if you listen to Bleach, and then you listen to Nevermind, and then In Utero, you can tell that big, huge difference in their style. It's like somebody got behind them and just started pushing them to be better. That was Dave Grohl. And then lastly, Kurt Cobain. Obviously, he was the voice, he was the face, he was the heart and soul and the artistic vision. He was everything behind the group. Obviously, he played lead guitar and vocals. Like Rut said, guitar wasn't his strength, and he was serviceable, but he by no means was a great guitarist. His strength, though, was on power chords and low riffs, and he was able to use those to his advantage with his vocals to convey his message and get his point across in his lyrics, which that's what he's known for. I'll give Rut the point on the harmonizing. There's no way he can touch that. Kurt was a great vocalist, a great singer, but by no means did he have that kind of talent that's like unworldly talent. I feel like where Kurt Cobain has a slight edge, though, is in his ability to convey his lyrics the way that he did. I feel like nobody does lyrics the way that Kurt Cobain does. So that's where I'd give Kurt a slight edge there.
Okay. Let's move on. I'll start off with you, Andy. You tell me, what is Alice in Chains' most notable album?
You skipped one.
I'm coming back to that. I'm coming back.
Okay. You can't change the format I made.
I'm the judge. I'm the judge. Don't you see this robe I have on? This robe and my gavel. So I'm the judge. I make the rules. You're in my courtroom. Tell me what the most notable album is for Alice in Chains.
The most notable album for Alice in Chains is going to be their second album, which is Dirt. Their first album, Facelift, was the first grunge album to ever be certified gold. I just want to throw that out there. It was much better than Nirvana's first album. We won't go into Nirvana's second album because Bennett's probably about to do that in depth. But Alice in Chains' most notable album was Dirt. It was certified quadruple platinum, meaning it had over 8 million copies sold. Steve Huey of AllMusic praised the album as a major artistic statement and the closest they ever came to recording a flat-out masterpiece. And Chris Gill of Guitar World called Dirt huge and foreboding, yet eerie and intimate and sublimely dark and brutally honest. There were 5 top 30 singles that came off of Dirt. This album got them the opening gig for Ozzy Osbourne's No More Tears tour. It was a huge album. It was a huge success. And honestly, as one of the reviewers said, it's a brutally honest album. It's a dark album. It is a window into what the band was at the time, which was a bunch of guys using heroin, addicted to heroin, but there was no hiding it. It's one of the most brutally honest albums you're going to see, and it may not necessarily project them in a positive light considering where they were at the time, but the music is honest, the music is reflective, and if you want to look at seeing a band for who they are, it's definitely Dirt. I wouldn't say Dirt is my favorite album, but it is hands down their most successful. Like I said, 5 top 30 singles, quadruple platinum. But at this point, I am likely about to lose. So on to Bennett.
Wow, he's giving you a lot of points himself, Bennett.
He set me up for failure. I know it.
I'm just trying to hammer where I think I have a chance, and where I don't, I'm just letting it go.
He's got something up his sleeve.
So tell me, Sir Bennett, what is Nirvana's most notable album?
Okay, believe it or not, their most notable album is Bleach. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, it should come to no shock to anybody that their most notable album is Nevermind, by far. Which they only had 3 official albums, so there wasn't really much to choose from. But like Rut, it's their second album where they struck gold or platinum, wherever you want to call it. Nevermind is considered one of the most influential albums of all time. This album dropped late 1991 and was an instant success. Like out of nowhere, boom, Nirvana on the scene, which shifted them from like the underground band to just like right in the forefront of all music. This was their most polished, all-around solid band. It's full of amazing songs. Of course, there Smells Like Teen Spirit. Everybody knows. Everybody's probably heard Lithium. They've also got Breed, Come As You Are, In Bloom, Polly. All these are iconic songs that you've heard on the radio. They've been on your video games, your Rockstar, your Guitar Hero, all that. But there's also the ones that are the hidden gems that you really need to go back and listen to. Once you kind of get out of the phase of like, oh, I've got to hear like their most popular songs, and you hear them, you're like, oh yeah, it's awesome. But where the beauty of Nevermind is some of those lesser known tracks that are on that album, songs like Drain You, Lounge Act, On a Plane. Those are amazing, amazing songs that nobody talks about. And that's kind of like where the beauty is in that album. It's not every song is a huge number 1 hit, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. These are great songs. Like I said, it dropped in 1991. Like I think it's around September of 91 is when the album dropped, and it was selling 400,000 copies a week. And by January of 92, it already took the number 1 spot on Billboard's Top 100. And just a little bit about, I'm not going to touch on a whole lot more about it, but it was named the number 1 best album of the 90s by some magazine. They're called Rolling Stones. I think they're credible. I'm not sure. That just kind of speaks for itself when you think of all the good music that we had in the 90s. All the good music that we had, Rolling Stones ranked this the number 1 best album. So to me, that kind of speaks for itself.
Okay, thank you for that. My next question is kind of a combination question. An album may be notable and a song may be notable, but in terms of your own opinion, I want you each to give your favorite album of your client and your favorite song. You can do that in the same answer if you like. And I'll start off with you, Bennett. You tell me, what is your favorite Nirvana album and what is your favorite song and why?
This is going to be an extremely long answer, so just buckle up. My favorite album, I really do appreciate what In Utero was. It was like a lot more darker and a lot more raw, and it's full of cryptic messages. Cryptic messages, and that's truly what Nirvana was. But and it was also number 7 album of the 90s, by the way, number 7, and it's not even my favorite album. I'm gonna have to go with Nevermind. I feel like it's so cliche, but I remember being 11, 12 years old. I was in the 6th grade, and I got the Nevermind CD.
I remember that too.
That was, yeah. It was 4 years after Kurt Cobain's suicide. I mean, I'm sure that I had heard Smells Like Teen Spirit maybe on the radio or on TV or something, but I was way too into like country music and Dwight Yoakam and all that. But kind of when you kind of reach that age around 11 or 12, you kind of start venturing out more into music that you haven't really been exposed to. And you kind of try to figure out who you are. And really, I started listening to that in 6th grade, and here we are now. I'm 33 years old, and I still listen to this album all the time, nonstop. I'd say probably not only is Nevermind my favorite Nirvana album, it's my favorite album of all time. Like I mentioned before, there's so many good songs on it that at least probably half or 3/4 of the songs that are on Nevermind have been like my favorite song at some point in my life. I just feel like no matter what kind of mood I'm in, that I can just get on Spotify or even go old school and get a CD, pop on Nevermind, and that'll just be like my go-to album. Another cool thing about it is you can go from song 1 to song 13, knock out the entire album in only 49 minutes. That's like my commute to work. So on a really good day, I can knock that album out twice, on the way to and on the way back. So for my favorite album, I'm gonna go with Nevermind. Favorite song, this was really, really, really tough. But if you were to guess that Smells Like Teen Spirit is my favorite song, you'd be wrong. It's not. It's probably one of my least favorite songs on the entire album. And maybe even one of my least favorite songs of all 102 of their songs. I probably have 10 or 15 favorite Nirvana songs. So really different. It was really difficult to narrow it down to just one. But if I had to say my favorite song, I'm gonna go with "Drain You," which is on the Nevermind album. Like I said, when I first heard this, like I said, when I was 11 or 12, and I thought it was a cool song, and I've always liked this song. It starts off like in a typical Nirvana fashion. You've got Cobain, and he's just on his guitar, and he's just doing his vocals, and this goes on for a few seconds. And then you've got Dave Grohl and you've got Chris Novoselic that come crashing in on their instruments, and they just rock out for the rest of the song. To me, like "Drain You" is like peak Nirvana because Kurt's lyrics are so good and his vocals are really good in this song. Dave Grohl, if you go listen to it, he is hammering the whole song. And like I said, you've got, like I mentioned before about Novoselic, where he'll just transition in the way he does. You'll hear that a lot in "Drain You," how he transitions from that very first, where it's kind of like just Kurt and the guitar. Then you hear the bass come in, and then they start jamming out. it's been described as a love song, or maybe even just a song about love. It's really, really, really hard to interpret this song. There's a guy, let me find it, by the name of Michael Elrod, who did a biography called Come As You Are, the story about Nirvana. And I guess this guy was able to kind of pick Kurt Cobain's mind a little bit back in 93, 94. And he said that Cobain had told him that the lyrics made him think of two brat kids that are in the same hospital bed, which makes no sense whatsoever. So how do you get a love song out of that? But it's kind of how unique the song is, because that's how his lyrics were. One really, really, really interesting thing about this song is how Nirvana wasn't really one to do like a cookie cutter of like most songs you hear, where it's like, okay, you have first verse, you have your chorus, you have your second verse, then you have your chorus again. Then, oh, here's a guitar solo. We're going to do the guitar solo. Now we're going to do our third verse, and then we'll do the chorus 2 times at the end to really just hammer down our chorus to them. They weren't like that. And this song is kind of a nod to kind of like what they would do to people to kind of mess with people. So I know, like, one of the first times I heard this song, we did the first verse, we did the chorus, we did the second verse, and I was like, okay, here comes the solo. No, what it is literally 17 bars of random noises. You have noisemakers, you hear a squeaky toy, and you hear like a aerosol spray can, like spray paint spraying. That's what you hear for the whole 17 bars, where you'd hear a guitar solo. And that's just kind of, to me, like, this sums up how Nirvana was, how unique, and how just, again, they would go against the grain on everything. There's a lot of imagery that's also in the song that's predicted, because Kurt, he was really, really fascinated with anatomy, particularly like human anatomy. If you ever seen the cover art for In Utero, it's literally anatomy of the female body, but in a very, very weird way that Kurt would do. And there's a lot of medical themes in this song, kind of like what he was fascinated with was a lot of medical things. And it kind of also kind of gives a nod a little bit about their album In Utero, because of just how fascinated he was with anatomy. The whole song was full of little cryptic messages about anatomy. Kurt himself claimed that he made up most of his lyrics on the spot for this song, which he did a lot for a lot of his songs. But he did point out that it was extremely important that he got the opening line on there about one baby to another says, I'm lucky to have met you. He said that part of the song, that is what he really wanted to hammer into the audience. It was voted 5th in Rolling Stone's Reader's Top 100 Nirvana Songs. And in 2015, Rolling Stones ranked it number 9 out of all 102 Nirvana songs. So I feel like a lot of people agree with me that's one of their better songs. And what I thought was really cool is, in an interview, Cobain, which he didn't really give a lot of interviews, he said that he cited Drain You as one of his favorite compositions. And he told Rolling Stone in a 93 interview that he thought it was as good, if not better, than Smells Like Teen Spirit, the one that everybody knows, the one that has all the acclaim and all the awards. He said that he likes this song maybe even better than that. He said that he loved the lyrics and he really never got tired of playing them. And he said that maybe if it was as big as Smells Like Teen Spirit, then he probably wouldn't even like that song as much, which I definitely agree with him there.
All right. Sir Andy, tell me your favorite Alice in Chains album and also favorite song.
Favorite Alice in Chains album is technically not even an album. It's an EP with only 7 songs on it, called Jar of Flies. And in my opinion, is the most pure and real album from any of the big four in all of the grunge era, if you want to classify it as an album. They came off of a tour in 1993. They were strung out, literally, and needed to unwind. They went to the studio not to cut an album, to unwind. They had no songs written when they entered the studio. They just went in to cool off, basically, to come down from that grind of the road. They went into the studio with no songs written, no plans to record any songs, and came out of the studio in only a week with a collection of songs they had written and recorded and had zero plans to release them. But the producers heard them, thought they had to put them out, put it out on the EP. And like I said, it is one of, if not the most pure, real look inside the band albums of the entire grunge era, of at least of the big four. Like I said, there's only 7 songs. It's mainly acoustic because they, like I said, zero plans to really release any of these songs. But out of it, you get probably what would be considered artistically Alice in Chains' best song. Definitely the best artistic song written by Lane Staley, which was Nutshell, which is really just talking about his loneliness because he's strung out on drugs. If I can't be my own, I'd be better dead. But also on that album is my favorite song. And much like Bennett, favorite song changes. Nutshell could be a favorite. Brother could be a favorite. But probably the most consistent, because also it's the most pure, it's the most beautiful song Alice in Chains has ever put out, and that's Don't Follow. It's a perfect mix. It shows everything of the band. You start off with Jerry. The song's written by Jerry. You start off with Jerry just sing. It's just Jerry and a guitar. And then Lane comes in. They go back and forth at the end. They vocalize towards the end those harmonies that are unbeatable. One critic said it was one of the best and referred to Cantrell's vocals on the songs as some of his best work ever, and it finds the band at its most calm, reflective, and gently warming. For a band whose most of their music was the devils and demons of addiction they were fighting, that produced great music. Heroin is a terrible thing, but for Nirvana and Alice in Chains, it has produced some fantastic music. You look for the silver lining, but Don't Follow is, we're going back to songwriting later, right? Are you still going to hit that point? All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to save this point for the songwriting point to keep that slow, to keep this short, I mean. But Don't Follow, it's beautiful. It's melodic. I wouldn't call it a happy song, but it's a warming song. It's a gentle song. And really, when you read the lyrics, when you look at the lyrics and you hear the lyrics in and of themselves don't sound warming. But in a way, it has a weird way. I don't want to play you the whole song. I'm sure, Elrod, you've never heard the song unless you've heard it with me.
Probably not.
But there's something beautiful. There's something warming. There's something gentle to it. And it's fantastic. Like I said, Jar of Flies, my favorite album, EP, whatever. It's got Nutshell on it, which is probably artistically their best song. And my favorite song of Don't Follow. And one interesting point about Don't Follow was never sang live by Lane Staley. Yet I've heard it live with the current version of Alice in Chains. Another point that we will get into momentarily. But one of their best songs, my favorite song, Lane Staley never sang it on the stage, ironically enough.
All right. Well, you kind of stole my thunder, but as you know, every band, every artist behind the song, you've got to be able to write the song well. You got to have a good songwriting technique. So, Sir Rutt, tell us about what is unique about Alice in Chains with regard to their songwriting.
Jerry Cantrell, you know, with a lot of bands, with Nirvana and probably 95% of bands out there, your lead singer, your front man is the vision. He's the driving force behind the band. But really, when you look at Alice in Chains, it's Jerry Cantrell. He's the ultimate, the definitive guitar player of the grunge era, and he also wrote a vast majority. He probably wrote or co-wrote 90% of Alice in Chains songs. Lane Staley did do some. Lane Staley did probably artistically their best song in Nutshell, like I said earlier. Lane Staley did Angry Chair by himself, but the rest of their big hits were either written or co-written by Jerry Cantrell. And what is amazing to me about Jerry Cantrell songwriting, and Lane Staley's for that point, not to throw shade or anything at Nirvana, but when you hear Nirvana when you're a teenager, when you're in your early 20s, at least like this with me, and I know it's been like this with at least one other person that's not in this room, but those songs hit you, Nirvana songs hit you, they mean something to you, they resonate to you. But as I've seen as I get older, those songs don't, Nirvana songs don't resonate as much with me as they used to. Now, at that same age, Alice in Chains songs resonated with me. They hit home. They take your mind different places, which is what good storytelling, good songwriting should do. The songs right now in my early 30s, as opposed to being a teenager in my early 20s, Alice in Chains songs don't mean to me what they did then, but they mean something completely different that still resonates. It's like an Alice in Chains song changes meaning over time with where you are in life. And oddly enough, it's almost like they intended for it to be that way. I'm going to read two Lane Staley quotes. The first one is, "Our perception of songs that we've written, the meaning changes from day to day to whatever stage we're at in our life and careers." And I think that will extend, I can say from personal experience, to the listener. And the other quote is, "The songs are about things we were thinking and we wrote them down. And when you listen to them, whatever you think it's about, that's what it's about." They hit on they hit on different levels at different times in your life. There's a particular song, Brother, that at one point in my life, I'm not going to go deep in my feels on this show. Nobody's here to hear me go deep in my feels and get emotional and sappy. But there was that song to me at one point highlighted and accentuated a certain characteristic of my brother and my relationship. And then fast forward 10 or 15 years, and that same song highlights and accentuates one of the components of our relationship, but a completely different component than it did 10 or 15 years ago. Now that me and him are both older, we both have a kid, we're both at different parts of our life. It's the same song. Lane Staley's been dead for years. It's not a different song, but it's almost like it is a different song that fits the lifestyle. With me personally, Nirvana hasn't done that. Nirvana hit me hard at a certain age, but it didn't grow with me. It stayed where it was. Whereas Alice in Chains, those songs have grown with me and mean something to me different than they did 10 or 15 years ago, but they still mean something and connect with me intimately even now after listening to them for 20 years.
All right, Bennett, tell me about Nirvana's songwriting?
Okay, obviously Kurt Cobain was the mastermind behind the songwriting. He wrote probably 99% of their songs. I know Dave Grohl is credited for a tiny, tiny bit, but like I said, probably 95 to 99% of it is Kurt. And he was a lyrical genius about how he would go about with his lyrics in a way that only Kurt really has. Um, and the fascinating thing is a lot of times he would just make up his lyrics on the spot. There's been counts where they go into the studio to record and they've got the beat, I guess you would say, or they've got the sound that they want, and they may have a chorus, and then they're getting ready to go and record, and then he just hammers out the lyrics like 5 minutes before they're set to record, and then they come out to be these genius songs that people still play today. One thing about what Kurt did is I think I touched on a little before, is he didn't really follow the norm about how songwriting had been done, and that the way he went about composing a song, it wasn't like a copy paste blueprint of storytelling that people were used to. And I feel like that's kind of where a lot of people misunderstand Nirvana and misunderstand Kurt and his lyrics. One thing that you can't really misunderstand is how passionate, how raw, how vulnerable he was in his songs and his lyrics. He told you his hurt. He wasn't afraid to show you his broken soul and how much pain he was in. But the way that he would go about doing it, he wouldn't just get on the microphone, "Oh, I'm hurting, Linda," you know. Shout out to Sling Blade there. But he did so, in all seriousness, he did so like in a very cryptic way. He would be like intentionally contradictory of himself. Like Smells Like Teen Spirit, where he'd say, "It's fun to lose and to pretend." And if you haven't had a chance to go listen to Lounge Act, listen to that one, because it's full of contradictions. He says, "Don't tell me what I want to hear, and I'm afraid I'm never going to fear." It's just full of contradictory things. He also has a lot of sarcastic humor in his lyrics, like Lithium and In Bloom, where he says to sell the kids for food. Obviously not, but it touches a lot on anti-establishment rebellion, nonconformists, which I'll go into that later. Also, too, he's very blunt and very serious when he needs to be. I think of like About a Girl and Come As You Are as some of his songs where he actually, instead of kind of being like sarcastic, he knew to make songs too that were meaningful and serious to him or to the audience. A lot of his songs that he wrote were really deep and meaningful, and they're so meaningful that they speak to generations of people 26 years after his death. The way he does that is a lot of his lyrics are open to interpretation, and he did that purposely, and he would not elaborate on a lot of his lyrics. He did that on purpose so that even like today in 2020, people will find meaning in them. I might listen to a song and I interpret it a certain way, and then Rudda listened to this song, same exact song, and it feels him a certain way, and then you listen to it and you're like, well, I feel this way about it, and that's a way that maybe me and Rut had never even thought about. I know when you think of Nirvana, a lot of people think about his songs about non-conforming, like I said, and just like anti-establishment. Let's rebel, stuff like that. But a lot of the other songs too, like where Rut said that they don't mean a lot to him now. I've went back and listened to songs that I didn't really give them much thought to at the time. But now that I am older, there's a lot of songs that speak to me differently now than they used to. He speaks, believe it or not, he speaks a lot about fatherhood and being a father. He touches a lot on women's rights, which to me is a big, 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 huge deal because we had just gotten out of the hairband where you had all your bands that pretty much materialized women, you know, as just objects. And Kurt kind of took that and said, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to actually, let's talk about their rights. Songs like Polly and Francis Farmer, Have Revenge on Seattle, are a couple of the bigger songs where he kind of touches on women's rights. He talks a lot about love, which is strange to think from him, but he really did. And he was kind of before his time too, because he was very, very open about gay rights even. He would even sometimes wear a dress and just be like, you know, I'm heterosexual, but it doesn't make a difference, you know, if I'm in this dress or not, I'm still the same person. And you idolized me before when I wore the flannel shirt. Now here I am in a dress. He would wear a dress on stage, you know, just to kind of prove a point to people like, you know, it's not a big deal. And this was back in, you know, early 90s where it was a big, big, huge taboo. And we're a lot more open now to it. I feel like he was way before his time on that. Maybe some people can go back and kind of look at that and kind of open their eyes to a little bit more about who he was as a person and not just, you know, the hurt soul that was a junkie. There was a whole lot more to him that people don't really realize. You know, touching back on about how he leaves songs open to interpretation, I think this is genius because just think back to when we were in high school. Right, that's me and you, like 2000 to 2004, 2005, 2006. Think about some of the like rap songs that were huge at the time that everybody was playing. We're like, oh man, this song is awesome. You know, I love this song. This is the greatest song ever. And now think of it now. It's silly. Like it's embarrassing. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I like this song. This is embarrassing. Like as soon as it comes on, I hear like the first little bit of them, like, oh yeah, I remember that song. Then I turn it, and that's what's really, really fascinating to me about Nirvana, about Kurt Cobain is, even though he's been gone 26 years, I can still put those songs on, and I love them just as much as I did now. It's a credit to his raw emotion and how he did have subjective lyrics that have kind of made Nirvana kind of timeless. And like you said, how the world still resonates with them today.
All right. Well, that leads me to the subtopic. I want to know, Sir Bennett, tell me about the legacy of Nirvana. You've kind of touched on this a little bit before, but tell me what the legacy of Nirvana is today.
To me, the legacy of Nirvana is that at the time they were, and even today, they're still one of the biggest bands of all time. Even 26 years after the end of Nirvana, they're one of the best-selling bands of all time. And just run through a few facts. These are undisputed facts about Nirvana and about their legacy. They have 7 MTV Music Awards. They sold 25 million records in the US alone, 75 million worldwide. Rolling Stone ranked them number 30 of the 100 greatest artists of all time. That's ahead of Michael Jackson. That's ahead of Queen. That's above Aerosmith, Pink Floyd. That's above all them. They had 4 songs that was in Rolling Stone's top 500 songs of all time. Think about just 500 songs of all time when Nirvana by themselves had 102, and that's just one band. And they had 4 in the top 500, with Smells Like Teen Spirit being number 9. All 3 of their official albums, like they had a few little side releases, like Unplugged and all that stuff, but all three of their albums hit in the top 500 of all time. And Nevermind comes in at number 17. They're also, if you get on Wikipedia and type in best-selling band of all time, they come in right around number 80 of best-selling band of all time. Touching back on Rolling Stone, they have the number one best-selling album of the 90s. That's Nevermind. I think I touched on that before. But what's also incredible is they also had the number 7 best album of the 90s in Utero. And in 2014, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So to me, Nirvana wasn't just part of the grunge movement. To me, they were the grunge movement.
Okay, Sir Rut, tell me about the legacy of Alice in Chains.
When you look at Alice in Chains, they're still playing today. They're still making music today. When you look at the legacy of Nirvana, it's all around Kurt Cobain, and rightly so. He was the driving force, just as many people assumed Lane Staley was. But Lane Staley has gone now, and Alice in Chains is still a thing. They're still a successful thing. They're still doing a lot of concerts. One of their best albums they ever put out was the first album they put out after Lane Staley had passed, with William Duvall, who is not Lane Staley by any means, but nobody is. William Duvall's as good as they could do. They could not do better than Duvall as far as replacing Lane Staley. But they're still making music today. And I think the legacy of Alice in Chains is that it is about the brutal honesty, and it's about the pure music, and it's purely about the music, which I'm going to hit in closing arguments, I think was what Kurt Cobain wanted in Nirvana. But Nirvana ended up, much to Cobain's chagrin, becoming more of a mainstream thing. And Cobain became an idol. Cobain became a big, he surpassed the band because he died so early, had something to do with it. He was a genius, don't get me wrong, but that adds to the legacy. Elvis was never as big as he was when he died. John Lennon was never as big as he was until he died. Kurt Cobain dying, do not take this in the wrong way, but was a great career move for his legacy. But when you look at grunge is supposed to be anti-establishment. It's supposed to be about the music. And even though they didn't want to, Nirvana kind of got out of that. Whereas Alice in Chains had a lot of success. Man in the Box was the number 2 most played song on the radio, behind Smells Like Teen Spirit, from the year 2010 to 2019. Dirt is one of the best-selling grunge albums ever. It's critically acclaimed, and it's sold a lot of albums. A lot of music buffs will look at and praise Jerry Cantrell and how great of a guitar player he is, how great of a songwriter he was. They look at Lane Staley and Cantrell's harmonies and how they transcended what should have been possible in music. Yet there's a lot of people, like I said, when you listen to Nirvana, you think you're a grunge fan, but they only have heard Nirvana. Whereas Alice in Chains had their success, but they stayed true to the music. They stayed into the music. They stayed into that grunge mentality of anti-establishment, purely about the music. And, you wonder what if, and this is probably a terrible argument to make, and no disrespect at all to Kurt Cobain, but what if Lane Staley had died in 94 and not 2001? would that have shot Alice in Chains up to a Nirvana level? Probably not. I think Nirvana still would have been seen by the mass audience as a step above. But Cobain's death vaulted Nirvana. And so people now will see Nirvana and think they're the greatest thing ever. Nirvana was a great band. But if we're looking at the best grunge band and looking strictly at the music, which is the core of what grunge was, I think Alice in Chains' legacy is going to be that they were the epitome of grunge.
You know, I should deduct points from you, right?
Or
You totally stole my thunder in one of my follow-up questions. Well, both of you have given me a lot to ponder. I've just got 2 follow-up questions, and I'll go ahead and ask the first one, even though you stole my thunder. I should deduct points. But let's say that Nirvana and Alice in Chains did not lose any members in the 90s, in the 2000s. In 2020, tell me how they would look right now in terms of perception, in terms of touring, in terms of how they would be perceived today. I'll start with you, Andy. How would Alice in Chains look? I'm sorry. How would Alice in Chains look if everybody was at full strength? And tell me how Nirvana would look in your estimation, too.
Honestly, I don't think Alice in Chains would look that different than they do right now. And I think that speaks to how true they are to the music, because Lane Staley had his problems and was out of Alice in Chains. He went to do Mad Season and some other stuff. And Alice in Chains weren't together when Lane Staley died. If he hadn't died when he did, he might have died later. I mean, he had a drug problem his entire life. And they very well could be exactly what they are now with William Duvall, except everybody would hate them now because it wasn't Lane Staley by choice instead of not Lane's, like the poor guy in Journey right now. Everybody hates them because it's not Steve Perry, and Steve Perry is still alive. Whereas nobody hates Alice in Chains that Lane Staley's not there because he can't be. As far as what Nirvana would be, in my opinion, I don't think they would still be together. I think Dave Grohl couldn't have survived long in Cobain's. I think Grohl would have split off to do his own thing. I think Cobain would have gotten tired of the famous life, which he kind of did anyway, but maybe if he'd have left it in another way and went underground and just did music, I think Nirvana would still be highly regarded. We would still be sitting here talking about Smells Like Teen Spirit. We would still be talking about how Nevermind's one of the greatest albums of all time. But I don't think we would hold Nirvana on so much of a higher level if Cobain had just gone away, which by all intents and purposes he wanted to do. I don't think that they would be held in as high regard if he had just went away, as opposed to, taking his own life, supposedly, allegedly, in '94. Courtney Love did it.
Sir Bennett?
Another podcast.
Yeah. I can't believe it went that long in this show before somebody mentioned that.
To me, if Nirvana was still around in 2020, like Rhett said, it would be completely different. Like you touched on with Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl, I said his passion wasn't for drums, even though he was a heck of a drummer. His passion was doing what Kurt was doing. He wanted to be that guy that was the inspiration of the band. He wanted to do guitar. That's what he was better at than drums. And he wanted to do the vocals, and he wanted to do the lyrics. Even though he got to do some of the lyrics that they did, he wanted to be that guy, and he got to be that guy. So I guess that worked out for him. As far as for Chris, I could see him as being the guy that still carried on Nirvana's legacy. I think we would still have him. I feel like he would take over as kind of the main guy of the group. And honestly, there would probably just be a rotation of people like you see on a lot of bands now that like, oh yeah, they used to be Nirvana, but it's different now. They wouldn't have the same sound as they did. They wouldn't have that same edginess to them. So even though it would still be the band Nirvana, it wouldn't be anything like what we had for those 5 years from 89 to 94. Going on to Kurt, Mike Rutt said, like, he didn't want the fame. It's kind of like he wanted to be the superstar, but he didn't. And he got just what he wished for. He wanted to be, anti-establishment. And I'm going to, lead this revolution, but at the same time, I'm going to hide in the shadows, and it's not possible. I feel like Kurt would have probably quit music altogether because that's just the type of person that he was. Maybe even as early as 94, 95. He's just like, you know what, I'm done. Even when they did the In Utero album, a lot of the songs that you hear in Nevermind are kind of songs that are constructed for radio play. They're catchy. You sing along to them, and they're great songs to sing along to. Everybody knows them. But then whenever you get to In Utero, that was more of this dark, raw side of Kurt that people, maybe his close friends had seen, but the people that bought the CD or went to the concert or saw him on MTV on that Smells Like Teen Spirit music video, that's the type of Kurt that they didn't see. And the reason that, and even the way that it was produced was a lot more grittier, I guess, where Nevermind was more polished. They kind of went back to that grittiness in Utero because that was Kurt's way of kicking back from that success that they'd already reached from Nevermind. So you're looking at 3 albums in 1993, and he's already starting to push back from everything that they'd become. Even whenever they would do songs for, I guess I forget which one it was, but they wanted to sing one of their more original songs, one that I think, I forget which song it was, but you can YouTube the video. They were forced to play Smells Like Teen Spirit. And so Kurt's way of saying, you know what, I'm not going to sing this, especially with they were going to not only they were going to make them play the song, but at the same time too, they were going to kind of like overdub over top of them, kind of like lip syncing. So what Kurt did is whenever he was playing the guitar, he was doing it like this, like his hand is like this. And he even goes to like put the microphone in his mouth when he goes to sing, just like completely butchers it because he was fed up with people telling him what to do, how to do it, when to do it, that went along with the fame. So I already see where he was starting to kind of grow old of that rock star lifestyle that he really wanted just a few years earlier. Kurt was also a really, really, really good artist. Drawings, paintings, sculptures, and even some photography. So I could see him giving up music completely altogether, not singing any more songs, and just completely abandoning his fans and going off and doing, like Rhett said, maybe he would go underground again and start a new band, or maybe he would just put it all together and just like do art from his home or whatever, a studio, something like that. So that's kind of where I'd see, like, there wouldn't really be a Nirvana today. There's no way. And that kind of I guess that does kind of lend itself to their legacy of, as quick as they come onto the scene, they were done. So I guess there's something to that people kind of gravitate towards. It was kind of like a shooting star, somewhat, kind of. As far as Alice in Chains, I'm going to go with like what Red said. I don't think they would be as different as they were back then. To me, they're probably the better band, more suitable for today's time than Nirvana. How long are they going to continue doing this anti-establishment thing that they started in the early 90s? I feel like, and they would be able to recruit talent that could come in and still give Alice in Chains the credit and still kind of serve the original members correctly. They would do them right. I feel like anybody that came in and tried to take on that Nirvana persona wouldn't be able to do them right.
All right. Well, that brings us to closing arguments. So, Sir Bennett, I think you started out with opening statements. So, as such, how about you close this for us tonight and tell me why Nirvana is better than Alice in Chains?
To me, Nirvana is the ultimate underdog story. Everybody loves an underdog story. They were just the underground band that had massive success unexpectedly, and they really did become like the voice or band, wherever you want to call it, of a whole entire generation, Generation X. They get a lot of kickback because of technically their music style is kind of more like simple notes to play on a lot of their songs. So people say, oh, well, they're not that great because, these songs are really easy to play. But think about this. Think about all those kids that pick up a Nevermind album. I don't know if they still have albums. Maybe not. Maybe they have the vinyls. Those are still popular, I guess. And they put it on, or they get on Spotify, or they get on YouTube's, whatever they get on, and they type in "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and they hear those simple chords, and they're like, dang, this is awesome. I've never heard anything like this, because all we hear today is the same copy and paste stuff that gets shoved down our throat. We don't have that personality that you see from what we had in the 90s. So somebody like a 16-year-old kid, whatever, picks up a guitar and is like, you know what, I'm going to start playing this. And then they learn to play Nirvana songs, and then they start to learn to play their own songs. The next thing you know, they may be the next big thing, all because they heard a simple song that it gave them inspiration to play. They're kind of proof that you don't have to be the best at anything to make good music and to touch people's lives. To me, that's not really what music's about. I kind of lean more towards the artistic side of stuff in my background, but to me, like, music is an expression. You could have somebody that picks up a guitar and they're terrible at it, but if they're playing it with heart and emotion, to me, they're making music. And that's kind of like what Nirvana did. They didn't care about how good it was or how bad it was. He was just conveying how he felt. And I think that's a way how a lot of people connect to him. Nirvana meant a lot of things to a lot of different people, and that's what they were really good at. What one person could appreciate Dave Grohl for his drumming, and that's what they gravitate to. Some people could appreciate how Kurt's lyrics are, and that's what they gravitate towards. Or maybe there's an aspiring bass player that just really likes the way that Novoselic held it down there. So maybe that's what they gravitate to. Dave Grohl himself said that you can sing a song, or that we can sing a song to a group of 80,000 people, and you have 85,000 people singing it back to us for 85,000 different reasons. To me, I seen a thing where Cobain had said that his artistic vision that he wanted to convey, not only in his music, but just in his entire art, his drawings, his paintings, everything. And it's very evident too if you look on his albums. He designed all their album covers. You've got, just to hit on this real quick, you've got the two more notable ones, and Nevermind. You've got the little naked baby underwater swimming for the dollar bill. That kind of had two different meanings to me, and I flip flop on which one I think it really means. There's one way you think of how at an early age you're kind of ingrained in your mind, you know, that you want to grow up and be successful. You ask a kid in like first grade, what do you want to be when you get older? Like, oh, I want to be rich. I want to be, you know, a star. So you've got the baby that's already chasing the money. Sometimes I think it's this, but other times too, I think that it was Kurt's way of sneaking in how they had already sold out on the Nirvana album, because they had hired this producer who was a big shot. I forget his name, but that's what gave them that polished sound. They were already starting to sell out. So you kind of put that imagery of the baby swimming towards the dollar bill as that being Nirvana swimming towards the money. Just kind of his way of his sarcastic humor. And also too, on In Utero, that picture of the anatomy of the woman is a drawing that he did. So it just kind of goes to show his artistic vision on not just his vocals, but anywho, he said that he wanted it to be strange, fierce, kind of weird, but also beautiful at the same time. And to me, that's exactly what Nirvana was.
All right. Take us home.
Alice in Chains is the most real, true, to the music band of the grunge era. Alice in Chains was bigger than any one member. Nirvana, when Cobain died, was done. It was over. Like Bennett alluded to, there was a good chance that Nirvana was over soon anyway, even if Kurt Cobain was alive. And I believe wholeheartedly that Nirvana could not survive without Cobain. But this isn't an argument of who was better, Alice in Chains or Kurt Cobain. It's who was better, Alice in Chains or Nirvana. Alice in Chains lost their front man. The band broke up and came together again after Lane Staley had already died, and are still making music today. They're still successful today. They're bigger than any one person. And if Cobain had just left and not died in 94, I think the luster that Nirvana has to the mainstream it would be there, but it wouldn't be as strong. Like I alluded to earlier, the songs change as you grow with Alice in Chains. Where you are in your life, that's what those songs mean. That's what Lane Staley said they meant when they wrote them in the early 90s, and that's what the songs mean now. I think the biggest point that I'm going to make, and it's the last point I'm going to make, we talked about how Kurt Cobain didn't want the fame. He didn't want the glory. He wanted it to be about the music. He wanted it to be about the art. And that's what Alice in Chains was. Alice in Chains was what Kurt Cobain wanted Nirvana to be. He wanted it to be about the music. He wanted it to be true to the music. Now, for reasons due to his own genius, Nirvana well shot back past that, but that is the attitude of grunge. It's about the music and only about the music. It's not about the establishment. It's not about the Grammys. It's not about the Billboard. It's not about the mainstream. Alice in Chains has dipped their toe into that level, but they've never springboarded. Like I said, if Lane Staley had died in '94, who knows? But Alice in Chains is what Kurt Cobain wanted Nirvana to be. Alice in Chains is the definitive, and in my humble, honest, sweet, dear, loving opinion, the best band of the grunge era. And this has been a really hard argument because I really like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. And honestly, do you have your winner picked already in your head before you announce it?
I do.
Okay, then don't change it after I say this. No matter who you pick in this argument, and even if you threw in Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, you're not necessarily wrong. All of this is a matter of opinion. All were great bands. Nirvana's a fantastic band. Alice in Chains is more of my cup of tea. And like I said, I conceded the points that I knew. I'm not going to sit here and try to argue that Dirt was a bigger album than Nevermind, or that Mike Starr was a better bass player than Novoselic. So I'll just give you the obvious points. But dadgummit, my points where I had a chance to take a shot, I did. Now give me a win, Elrod.
Here's how I score this. I initially was going to, give a point for opening and giving the point for this. But here's what I've done. I don't think there's any doubt that when you look at the sum of the parts of each of the bands, that talent-wise, I think that Nirvana had better talent. When you look at Dave Grohl, when you look at...
doesn't agree with that. Dave Grohl
you're on
in
thin ice, dude.
1990.
I'm trying to give you a win here. You're on thin ice.
Dave Grohl in 1991 was not Dave Grohl in 2020.
I understand that, but looking back now, I think that longevity-wise, you got to say that Alice in Chains, they're still playing music today. Nirvana imploded after Cobain died. Oh, this is really tough because I thought this was going to be a slam dunk. But honestly,
I did too, because you're not going to give me anything unless I work really, really hard for it. And if you took a poll of the general public, 95% are going to say Nirvana. This was an uphill battle for me from the start. Continue, Your Honor.
That's right. That's right. You finally gave me some respect. And I think we should record this for history right here. Tonight is April 20th, 2012. I finally get my...
If I give you credit on 420, does it really count?
No, it does not. Here's the way I look at this. You got to look at... Just look at the polls of people in the music industry, what they vote best songs of all time. Nirvana has 4 inside the top 100. Is that right? Or is that 4 out of top 50? What did you say, Bennett?
What's the question? They had 4 out of the top songs?
Yes.
4 of the top 500.
4 of the top 500. How many does Alice in Chains have, Andy? You know?
I don't know. They didn't care what the mainstream media people that do these polls thought. And in all honesty, Cobain probably didn't either, but
I don't think so.
I think you got to look at this. You got to look at the sum of the parts. You got to look at the legacy. The winner tonight is Alice in Chains.
Elrod.
Just kidding. The winner tonight is Nirvana. Did you see how happy he was? I thought he won.
I was just checking the temperature in hell when you threw the swerve in there.
Yeah, there's no way you can go against Nirvana on this. Are you serious? You look at the sum of the parts.
I'm serious.
I don't know. This closing argument was pretty good.
Your logic is flawed. If you want to tell me that Nirvana is a more talented band, your logic is flawed, at least if we're speaking musically.
This is the final judgment. The
Appeal.
No pill rots. No pill rots here.
All right. Well, this is
I
the
feel like
worst
this
episode
argument's
we've
not
done.
done.
Do what?
I feel like this argument's not over.
Probably not.
No.
We may have to come back to this sometime. All right,
Part
guys.
two.
Possibly. All right, guys. That for those of you watching, if you're still watching at this point, that went really long. But it was informative. It was a crap finish, but it was informative. But yeah, we're gonna do this more often. I don't know. What's it been? 2 weeks since the other episode, so I don't know if we'll do it bi-weekly or we may do it weekly, depending on the reception. Guys, like the video. Let us know what you think of the video. Like the page, share the page, tell all your friends to come check us out. If you think we're great, tell them we're great. If you think we suck, lie and tell them we're great. Send them this way. We'll try to think of another thing. I'm going to put a post tomorrow as you're hearing this. In reality, it's 2 days from us right now. But I'm going to put a post on the page and ask for some ideas because we had some hard times coming up with another idea. I've actually had a few people give me suggestions, and I'm going to compile a list. So, you know, if you guys want to shoot us some ideas, we'd greatly appreciate it. Again, thanks for sitting through this. Thanks for watching. If you think Elrod's a crap judge, which I personally think he is right now.
Hey, don't disrespect the judiciary. Don't disrespect the judiciary.
Court's out of session. You dismissed. But it was a crap finish, but it was fun to do. Bennett, Elrod, thanks for coming together on Monday night to do this again.
Thanks for having us. If I could add one thing to people
Yeah.
that are listening, that maybe they've never really listened to either one of these bands so much. Maybe they heard a couple of their songs. I hope that we've gave some insight to where you go back and you really start listening to some of these songs, and maybe they can mean something to you and impact your life in a way, or maybe you feel a certain way and then you can kind of go to that song, then just go out and start listening to some stuff you haven't listened to.
Yeah, Elrod.
Yeah.
I know you're not a huge Nirvana or Alice in Chains fan, and my point to that would be don't just listen to the popular songs. Bennett is not a fan of Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Not.
Man in the Box, which I feel right here in this little square, Man in the Box is Alice in Chains' probably most notable song. It's more towards the bottom half of my favorites and of their good ones. So don't just listen to the popular songs. Find a band you like. Listen to them for the songs that aren't popular, Elrod.
Find those hidden gems. They're there. You got to find them.
And with Alice in Chains and Nirvana, there's several. Expand your music knowledge, children. Elrod, you got anything to add?
You thought you won. I snatched it from the jaws of victory.
That's cold.
Snatched.
It was cold. I'm a little hot. I'm about half hot.
It might be the flannel shirt.
It's flannel. It's gotta
Probably
go.
is the flannel shirt. I had to pull this out of the closet. Anyway, all right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you're not asleep or tuned us out at this point. But again, let us know what you think. Let us know your ideas. And we'll see you in the next video. Peace.